the golden goose. There was a man who had 3 sons, the youngest of whom was considered very silly, and everybody used to mock him and make fun of him. The eldest son wanted to cut wood in the forest, and before he left home, his mother prepared a beautiful lunch for him to take with, so that he might not suffer from hunger or thirst. As he entered the forest, he met an old man who said,
"Good morning, dear boy.
And then,
Please give me a little food out of your basket, and a drop of wine out of your bottle, for I am very hungry and thirsty."
But the clever son replied,
"What? Give you my food and wine? Why, if I did, I should have none for myself. Not I, indeed. Take yourself off."
And he left the man standing and went on. The young man began cutting down a tree, but it was not long before he made a false stroke. The axe slipped and cut his arm so badly that he was obliged to go home and have it bound up. This accident was caused by the little old man, though the young man had no idea. The next day, the second son went out into the forest to cut wood, and his mother gave him lunch as well. As he entered the wood, the same little old man met him and begged for a bit of food and wine. But the second son answered rudely,
"What I might give to you, I shall want for myself, so be off with you."
Then he left the little old man standing in the road and walked on. His punishment soon came. He had scarcely given 2 strokes on a tree with his axe, when he hit his leg such a terrible blow that he was obliged to limp home in great pain. Then the silly son said to his father, "Let me go for once and cut wood in the forest." But his father said,
"No, your brothers have been hurt already, and it would be worse for you who doesn't understand woodcutting."
The boy, however, begged so hard to be allowed to go that his father said,
All right, get along with you. You earn your experience very dearly today, I expect."
His mother gave him a lunch as well, but nothing of the sort as she had given her other sons. The youngest son had packed in a sack some old bread made of water, not milk, and some sour beer, not wine. The young boy, so excited to be tasked with the job usually set aside for his elder brothers, cared not in the least and hurried out the door with hasty goodbyes. When he reached the wood, the very same little old man met him, and after greeting him kindly, said,
"Do give me a little of your lunch, for I am very hungry and thirsty."
"Oh," replied the simple youth, "I have only bread, which has been baked in the ashes, and some sour beer. But you are welcome to share it with me. Let us sit down and eat and drink together." So they seated themselves, and lo and behold, when the youth opened his basket, the bread had been turned into a beautiful cake, and the sour beer into champagne. After they had eaten and drank enough, the little old man said,
"Because you have been kind-hearted and shared your lunch with me, I will make you in future lucky in all you undertake. There stands an old tree. Cut it down, and you will find something good at the root."
The old man said,
"Farewell,"
and left. The youth set to work, and very soon succeeded in felling the tree, when he found sitting at the roots a goose whose feathers were of pure gold. He took it up, and instead of going home, carried it with him to an inn at a little distance, where he intended to pass the night. The landlord had 3 daughters, who looked at the goose with envious eyes. They had never seen such a wonderful bird, and longed to have at least one of its feathers. "Oh," thought the eldest, I shall soon have an opportunity to pluck one of them. And so it happened, for not long after the young man left the room, she instantly went up to the bird and took hold of its wing. But as she did so, her finger and thumb stuck to the wing, and she could not move. In a short time after, the second sister came in with the full expectation of gaining a golden feather. But as she touched her sister to move her from the bird, her hand stuck fast to her sister's dress, and neither of them could free herself. At last in came the third sister with the same intention. "Oh, sister, do stop! Oh, please, no,
keep away,
keep
sister,
away!"
stop!
screamed the two. But she could not imagine why she should keep away. If they were near the golden bird, why should not she be there? So she made a spring forward and touched her second sister, and immediately she also was made a prisoner, and in this position they were obliged to remain by the goose all night. In the morning the young man came in, took the goose in his arms, and went away without troubling himself about the three girls, who, though immediately became free of the bird, somehow clung to it invisibly, and were forced to walk the direction the young man and bird had walked. In the middle of a field they were met by the parson of the parish, who looked with wonder at the procession as it came near him.
Oh, shame on you!
He cried out.
What are you about, you bold-faced hotties, running after a young man in that way through the fields? Go home, all of you!
He placed his hand on the youngest to pull her back, but the moment he touched her, he also became fixed in stride, and was obliged to follow and run like the rest. In a few minutes another man met them, and when he saw the pastor running after the girls, he wondered greatly and cried out,
Master Parsons, where are you running in such haste? Have you forgotten there's a christening today?
And as the procession did not stop, he ran after it and seized the pastor's gown. In a moment he found that he too was fixed in stride, and he also had to run like the rest. And now there were 5 trotting along, one behind the other. Then 2 peasants came by with their tools from the field. The parson called out to them and begged them to come and release him and the other man. Hardly had they touched the second man, and they also stuck as fast as the others, and the simpleton with his young golden goose travelled with 7 behind. After a while they came to a city in which reigned a king who had a daughter of a terribly sad character, that no one could make her laugh. Therefore he issued a decree that whomever would make the princess laugh would marry her. Now when the simple youth heard this, he ran before her, and the whole 7 trotted after him. The sight was so ridiculous that the moment the princess saw it, she burst into a violent fit of laughter, and they thought she would never stop. After this, the youth went to the king and demanded his daughter in marriage according to the king's decree. But His Majesty did not quite like to have the young man for a son-in-law, so he said that before he could consent to the marriage, the youth must bring him a man who could drink all the wine in the king's cellar. The young man went into the forest, for he thought, "Oh, if anyone can help me, it's a little old man." When he arrived at the spot where he had cut down the tree, there stood a man with a very miserable face. The youth asked him why he looked so sorrowful.
Oh,
He exclaimed,
oh, I suffer such dreadful thirst that nothing seems able to quench it, and cold water I cannot endure. I have emptied a cask of wine already, but it was like a drop of water on a hot stone. I can help you.
cried the young man.
Come with me, and you shall have your fill, I promise.
He led the man into the king's cellar, where he opened the casks one after another, and drank till his head ached, and before the day ended he had emptied the king's cellar. Again the young man asked for his bride, but the king was annoyed at the thought of giving his daughter to such a common fellow, and to get rid of him he made another condition. He said that no man should have his daughter who could not find someone able to eat up a whole mountain of bread. Away went the simple youth yet again to the forest as before, and there in the same place sat a man, binding himself round tightly with a belt, and making the most horrid faces. As the youth approached, he cried,
I've eaten a whole ovenful of rolls, but it has not satisfied me a bit.
I am as hungry as ever, and my stomach feels so empty that I am obliged to bind it round tightly, or I should die of hunger.
The simple youth could hardly contain himself for joy when he heard this.
Get up, and come with me. I will give you plenty to eat,
he exclaimed. So he led him to the king's court, where his majesty had ordered all the flour in the kingdom to be made into bread, and piled up in a huge mountain. The hungry man placed himself before the bread and began to eat, and before evening the whole pile had disappeared. Then the simpleton went a third time to the king and asked for his bride. The king could not any longer refuse to give him his daughter in marriage. The wedding was celebrated with great pomp, and as the young son sat at his banquet, he noticed the old man from the forest greeting him from afar. The young man knew at once that it was in fact the old man who had helped him and kept his word, and insisted that the old man sit beside him in the grand celebration. After the king's death, the simple woodcutter inherited the whole kingdom and became king. He also made the old man his most trusted adviser, and lived for many years happily with his wife and his golden goose.